Welcome to the World Builders Anvil, episode 147. Michael's horrific movie list. Could you stop?
Fire bad.
Stop going to the bathroom in the studio.
Blech.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
What are you, a goat? Welcome back.
Well, if you weren't so laughable, I wouldn't be half laughing.
Well, you know what? If I
things.
didn't make you laugh, then you'd just be sitting here sad and crying and tearful, terrified, screams and what have you, because we're talking about scary stuff today, and you are a chicken poo. I said it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you still talking?
Yeah,
right,
said it.
Right.
Chicken poo.
Chicken poo. Okay. I'm going to start crying now.
See, you knew it.
Yep. Okay, whatever. Okay, so quick news. Michael forced me to create a Facebook group for NaNoWriMo, and we'll probably hang on to this group afterwards just for world builders to talk about world building and how to move ahead in world building. It is called the Fantasy World Builders Undercroft. It is a closed Facebook group, and right now I've started it up since last episode.
Did you send me an invite?
Not maybe.
Okay.
And we'll try and get some people in there. I know this is kind of last minute, but I like the idea of the Facebook groups anyway. I have one for my other podcast. I love it. Community is very active, so come on in. This is not a place to pitch your stuff. It's a place to talk about making your stuff. So it's the Fantasy World Builders Undercroft. It is a Facebook group. It is closed, so it won't come across your newsfeed on when your boss is checking in on you during the day. I'm not suggesting that you should talk in it during the day, but if it is and your boss doesn't belong to the group, you'll never know. That's why I keep it closed. Then it's harder for spammers to get in there. So
yeah, but it's good that people won't have weird things in their field, like in their feed. That way they're not clicking it open and
that's
it's like,
right.
Oh, read about my new book, the blood sucking armadillo jello monster. Like what? What is that? That's my second book.
And I have a movie more horrible than any Michael's going to talk about. This says this. Michael is the movie guru of the group. He's in charge of all things that are real fantasy. I'm
not real sure how.
I'm not real sure. So stuff that.
But hey, I'm in charge of something.
Stuff that other people make up that they've already done. Outside of Neil Gaiman, who's banned from the show.
Mostly stuff that just ends up being an influence on us in the media.
No Neil Gaiman thing will ever make the show's top list.
So
ever.
We did some. pull the nails out, Jeff. Settle down. You're white knuckled on the table. I said to Jeff at the end of the other episode that he owed me more horror because I'm such a big horror fan, and we spent half the episode talking about like NaNoWriMo stuff. So I said, let's do another horror one. And since we're already into NaNoWriMo and you guys are probably, already starting to lose your minds a little, we figured we would talk about more horror movies specifically. We're going to do books, but we figured you don't have time to read a book right now because you should be writing.
And all of these episodes this month are going to be more light fare, just sort of fan stuff, more lighthearted, less real world work. So keep that in mind. We don't want to overburden your brain right now because it should be overburdened by writing.
So if you've put the pen or the keyboard down, you might want to take a look at one of the following movies we're going to talk about in today's episode, just sticking in the horror genre. Maybe we do like an action or drama or comedy in one of the
I will
next few
write
episodes.
down here what I consider the most horrifying movie ever.
Well, you talked about it last episode.
No.
It's not that one.
It's not that one. That one is the most horror, the most horror-ridden thing of any genre, like books or movies or anything. If I'm thinking of a horror movie, this is the one that frightened me the most. And I'll write down. We'll see if our number ones match.
So you want me to write down what I think is the scariest movie ever made?
Well, I'm sure you have it written down there.
Well, I might
on your list.
No, because like I have. Well, how exactly do you want me to frame what you want me to write? Like what?
This is Michael's
like my
decision on what the most.
What is the scariest movie ever made, in my opinion?
Yes. And you're not gonna get that off last. And when you get to that, you'll signal me.
Well, I kind of wanted to talk about that movie. Like I think I have an answer.
Just make it the last one.
Make it the last one. Okay.
The last one you talk about.
All right. Well, I can go on and on about stuff, and before we so
we'll never get to this part.
We'll never get to it. No, well, this is actually a preface to shorten some of it.
Yeah.
So we could just go down what are some of the greatest horror movies ever made, and I'll say some of them right now, but I don't think they need to be talked about a ton because they have been talked about. You can watch documentaries on horror movies. If you just type in top 10, top 25, top 100 horror movies, inevitably most of these movies will be right near the top.
And you know what? When you're showing that friend our podcast and showing them how to subscribe to podcasts, you can actually look up. There are great podcasts out there. I can't remember the name right now, and I apologize for that. I'm going to put a recommendation for a horror podcast into this episode.
Well, I should be listening to a horror podcast. So some of the things that you'll commonly find.
Bonus points for saying blah, blah.
Blah, blah. Do I get
Yeah.
Okay. You said points, so I'm giving myself 2.
I don't get any for saying it.
Well, no, because now I have to come up with something that you need to say to get 2 points.
Blah, blah.
So if I say it again, do I get 2 more?
Yeah. So this whole rest of the episode will
This is going to be a
blah.
lot of points in this episode. All right, it's Michael's winning 4-0. All right. Well, you just told me I can have it again. No, it doesn't count if you make the rule. You realize the rules I make for you are going to be tougher. Thumb master?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Is that because you're editing or
No.
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 You going to tell me later what that means?
Okay. That's not show appropriate.
Fine.
It's too horrible.
Okay, but it is a horror episode.
Oh.
So anyway, going back to what I was saying, if you look up any top 10, 25, 150 horror movies list, some of these will be right up near the top. Almost always, The Exorcist will be number 1, with good reason. Now, Jeff will argue the point, but you have to understand that when the book and when the movie came out, I think the book was 60s or 70s. The movie was set 70s, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it was just a different time period. Mm-hmm. So because of when it was released, just like when we were talking about when you watch certain movies as a kid, they still have an impact because you watch it through the mind of a child. Yeah. I think with The Exorcist, as a society, that movie hit everybody a certain way, and it still managed to maintain its horror and its
which is
freak out nature. There are things in that movie that are genuinely scary to watch. Yeah. It still holds up. It's still a scary movie. I don't think it's as scary as some more modern horror films that take a classic approach to horror, as opposed to a modern approach to horror, which would be like a Paranormal Activity or something like that. The Omen is very commonly number 2, and if you ask me, it should be. I think The Omen is one of the scariest. I think
for me, that's my biggest.
I think The Omen
in reality.
I think The Omen is probably scarier than The Exorcist.
For me,
I would argue.
But one thing you have to keep in mind too is horror is very culturally based. A lot of things like the idea of being afraid of your dead ancestors might be found hilarious by other cultures in the world. The same way as I guess music, which that one blew my mind when I found it out. Like, music that scares me is a cultural thing. I never knew that. I always thought it sounded creepy. But studies have shown that like music that horrifies Westerners has completely different emotions for people of other cultures when they hear it. So, but whatever. Our audience is probably in the West and probably can at least understand English.
Yeah.
Even though that's not a prerequisite.
If you don't speak English.
If you know anyone in Mongolia, we need Mongolian downloads.
We're trying to pick up more numbers in Mongolia, so if you know anyone. Rosemary's Baby, very commonly up there. Rosemary's Baby is one of these interesting horror movies in that it's a slow payoff. There are movies that do this where they spend most of the movie slowly burning to a big pyre at the end, and where it really scares you is at the very end of the movie. And Rosemary's Baby has a couple little weird and unsettling moments throughout.
It's kind of, to me, and I haven't seen it in a long time when I was trying to watch it, I never enjoyed the movie much. It had too much of a late 60s, early 70s psychedelic feel to it.
Yes. But I don't know if I would go with psychedelic except for 2 scenes. It's got that slow 60s film style.
Yeah.
So like the delivery is just, it's very slow.
It's kind of like people who say like the what is that, the Chinatown was a scary or was a good movie. I mean, whatever.
Chinatown was a good movie.
I'm joking.
Aren't they both? They were both Polanski. Both of those movies are Roman Polanski.
Oh, and they both suck.
Same director.
Yeah.
Shut up. So, is there anything else you want to say about Rosemary's Baby? You seemed like you were actually kind of into talking about that.
It kind of, because to me, it kind of felt like it was a prequel to The Omen. And it could be kind of taken that way, but I don't think if it was intentional. It was
no.
Maybe,
I think Rosemary's Baby came out before The Omen.
Oh, no, I did, but I think it was almost like a prequel, as in, her baby is Damien. I mean, if that's the name of the Antichrist in the Omen movies.
In the Omen movies, his name is Damien.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the child's name is. And I don't know if we get the name of the child in Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah. But it's all about her baby.
Yes.
And it was directed actually by, I'm checking it out online, it's Jerry Springer.
I don't think that's true. You are not the father. The devil is. The devil is the father.
That would be awesome. Come on.
That would be a funny episode. And more today on Maury, the devil's son. Jaws. These are in no particular order. I'm going to hit a couple other ones here that are that are generally like, we're also going to mention The Shining.
And obviously, when you say Jaws, you obviously only mean Jaws.
Jaws.
Because that's one of those where it went into campy in all the sequels, but a lot of things
the second one's not bad. The third one is where you get Jaws 3D and they're in the underwater park, and the fourth one's absolutely insane. And, but the first Jaws it's a scary movie, and everyone I think knows the whole bit about Jaws is that the movie wasn't supposed to be. Well, the shark did it. It wasn't supposed to be delivered the way it was. Really. Steven Spielberg was like 21, 22, 23 when he made Jaws.
So this was a screw up good movie.
It was a screw up good movie, but here's the thing: it was like accidental genius. They wanted to show the shark more. They wanted to show it more, but they couldn't get the thing to work.
So that was it.
You really didn't know this?
No, I did not know this.
Absolutely. They had a very difficult time with the mechanical shark. They like built one and it was on like a crane, and like one of the first times they were putting it in the water and they were like, okay, we're ready to do something with it. It sank to the bottom of the Sound. And they're like, oh crap! Half of they're watching and thinking their careers are going down with this mechanical shark. Like they had a really hard time.
And it made the movie, because once again,
the reason it was so scary is because they chose, okay, well, because we're having such a hard time with this and we're on a schedule,
we'll show a fin.
We will not show the shark. We will show the shark's point of view. We'll show little pieces of the shark. And you don't get to see the shark until more than an hour into the movie.
And if you listen to the last episode, which if you shouldn't, you need to go right now and download it. One of our biggest complaints about many creature movies,
creature features,
they show the creature too much.
Let's be very clear. I don't mind seeing the creature a lot if the creature is impressive. It ruins it for me almost every time. Not for me.
Because the thing is, and not all, like, I think another movie we'll talk about in a few minutes.
I think we're going to talk about it right now.
Let's go right there. And like Aliens, it works.
Alien.
I'm sorry.
Let's be clear.
It works in Aliens too, but not in the same horror way.
The first Alien movie, Ridley Scott's Alien,
was a great horror movie.
One of the most suspenseful. I mean, we're chalking it in with horror. I will argue that it is sci-fi, but it is definitely horror themed. Because you spend. I think most of the movie, I don't think you see it until he sees it in the tunnel, like really deep in the movie. I don't think you actually see it.
You see the face hugger.
Well, of course, you see the face hugger.
But the actual true alien,
Xenomorph,
adult, nasty monster thing, you don't see until the end. And it chases them and it scares them and you're scared with them. And so that's why I say it works as a good horror movie.
Definitely.
And this is where we talked about this many times is don't feel obligated if you're in one genre to ignore elements of other genres, because without the horror elements, Alien would have not been scary.
Definitely not.
Alien would have not been a good movie.
And I think that
it would be E.T.
They
which was a good movie, but not
for different reasons.
Yeah.
They appropriately titled a recent video game on Aliens called Alien Isolation, and it takes place during that same. No, I lied. Not during that time period. It takes place after. Because there's sleeping, cryo sleeping in that series. I'm trying to think time wise when it takes place, but you play Ripley's daughter, who I think is younger, or might actually be older than Ripley, because Ripley slept and she grew and whatever. But the point is that throughout the entirety of the video game, it's not possible to kill the one alien that's in the game. So isolation. And like in that movie, a good part of the fear that is built into that movie is the isolation of both Ripley and the captain, because the captain is the first one to actually run into the alien once it gets free on the ship. And it's very scary how claustrophobic it feels, like that feeling.
And it worked better because of the spaceship too. I mean, in an open world environment, it's not as frightening, but there's how do you get away?
Yeah, how do you get away?
Let's just open the door and go out.
No, can't do that. Yeah, that's like I think that's like one of those things where so many horror movies, like some sort of sleepaway camp, it's like, okay, well, we're out there, so we can't go anywhere, or the isolated Arctic, research station, i.e., the Thing.
Yeah.
Or something that's like in a submarine, or commonly on a spaceship, because you can't go anywhere. You have to deal with the problem.
But to me, the reason why it works, like seeing the creature works in that movie, is because it's, even though the visual sight of the creature is intimidating,
very,
it is not the horror of the movie. The thing pushing the horror through the movie is the escaping and can't really get away from the creature.
Well, I think also the not knowing, the paranoia of I know I'm not completely safe. Even though I should be safe here, there's something here that can kill me, and I have no idea where it is.
But for more sort of supernatural boogeyman type of creatures, it's the creature itself that is horrible. And when it's that, and when it's the appearance that's important to the horror, that's where you can't pull off showing it. Because the problem is, once you show it, you've
lost the ability to reveal it again.
Yeah.
See, again, I'm still gonna say that if it's scary enough, if it's well designed enough, that there are plenty.
But I mean, the thing is, you might get 200 million people who agree with you, which would make it for a good movie haul.
Right.
But for some people, it will ruin it.
Yeah. I think you and I are gonna agree to disagree on this one. I'm gonna half agree with you, because there's definitely scenarios in movies that specifically, I totally agree. They show the monster, and you're like, ugh. And I mentioned that in the last episode, like Krampus.
But then you do have movies like Leprechaun that pull it off.
Terrifying. Well, no, I mean, movies like Alien and Aliens is a great example, because they are still scary.
Yes.
Like we've seen, there's been 6 Alien movies.
But I would argue the creature's appearance is not important to the horror of the show. It helps heighten the horror, because it's this intimidating thing that you can't stop. But the horror is you are trapped and there's nowhere to go.
Well, I think there's also an aspect of when you're fighting something. In this case, it's not supernatural. It's actually within the bounds of the
game over,
within the reality of the fiction that you're watching. They can kill them. They can possibly overcome. But when you're going up against a legit boogeyman, and
you can't.
You don't. Well, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. You don't know.
Yeah.
So on that front, it actually reminds me of the Babadook, which is, you haven't seen it, and you should. You want to make fun of the title
because it makes you think of Baba Hotep.
Well, you know what it is? It's the name of a children's book within the movie.
Okay,
so it sounds kind of cute and funny, Babadook, and and
that's kind of the joke of the horror movie. But I'm not saying it makes the horror movie a joke, but giving it the name of the kid's story.
Yeah, and what I'm going to reveal something, and well, here's the thing. I watched the movie, and it's very atmospheric, and it's creepy, and it's good. But as we have mentioned in prior episodes, and certainly in the last episode, where, especially with horror, they go so far and then they don't seem to wrap things up in a way that makes sense or is satisfying enough. And then you're like, oh, I just wasted an hour and a half of my time because the conclusion didn't help me. You know, it didn't drop me off at the conclusion of, a 3-part act or what have you. Babadook kind of does that, but only because I didn't realize what the movie was really about. I found out later that the Babadook in the movie is not so much a boogeyman, but the phantom of guilt and grief of the wife having lost her husband. So I want to rewatch the movie with that in mind. Because I told that to Sarah, and we both enjoyed the movie to an extent.
But like post-movie watching it brought more understanding. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that watching it with that in mind, I'll be able to enjoy it more. I certainly enjoy it more now with that twist on it. So, well, I should probably mention The Shining. I feel like we've gotten really far away from it, but I'm just going to footnote The Shining as a classic horror movie. To be honest, people are going to hate me for saying this.
I won't.
I found it boring.
Yeah. There were, like I said, there were a few moments in there that were enjoyable. The movie I found boring too.
I don't know that I have ever actually watched it front to back.
No.
Because I have found it boring to watch. But people say it's the most terrifying horror movie ever. I don't think that.
No, Here's Johnny was amusing, but it did not frighten me.
I'm sure the book is a lot more so.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And I'm going to throw one in here that was sort of same time frame that is an underrated horror movie, I think.
Oh, I love this.
Children of the Corn.
Yes.
The first one.
First Children of the Corn is scary.
I don't think any of the other ones were meant to be good. They were meant to make money, I believe.
Yeah.
But the first one...
Glad you remembered this one. I forgot about this one.
Yeah. It actually was a genuinely... And it's one of those things, too, where this is something Michael and I like to go into as well that we do actually agree on. Shocking. Is this idea of taking things that should be normal, but then twisting them slightly.
I'm going to give Jeff 3 points for that.
Wow. He always gives me just enough to not lose, to not win.
Yeah, I'm still winning.
The idea is, it's when you take something normal, and especially if you've ever been to the Midwest or people's notions of the Midwest Farm Belt corn area, is it's very flat. Nice, but it's flat, but it's the people there are nice. They go out of their way to help you. So it's taking that idea and then turning it into horror, I think is clever for people who understand that part, but not everyone knows enough to know that about the Midwest. But it still takes this scenario that could exist, but it twists it, something that you might know, and twist it in a way that makes it horrifying.
There is what sticks out the most for me, because I haven't seen that movie in probably 15 to 20 years.
I know, neither have I, which is dangerous to say it's scary, because then we could rewatch and be like, oh wow, we were just idiot kids.
I do seem to remember the thing that sticks out the most for me is the very beginning of the movie, how you get introduced to the plot is shocking.
Yeah.
Like talk about a jump scare. Like that's an appropriate jump scare. Like that's the perfect appropriate jump scare. And you're like, how on earth did that just happen? Like
that's wrong.
You're driving down a street that you can see probably 40 miles on because it's straight as an arrow and flat. And all of a sudden they clobber a person. And how did they not see that person in the road? They got distracted for a moment.
And you saw the road too, though.
Yeah.
So it's like your eyes.
Did I see that correctly?
Did I miss it when they flashed?
Rewind it. Was there a guy there? Like they hit a guy. Yeah. So, speaking of movies that start that way, Texas Chainsaw Massacre starts almost the same way.
Oh, really?
You've got a van full of kids on a little road trip through Texas, and they come across a hitchhiker that needs help. They let that person in, and
you never do that. You never help people.
We outnumber them. I am going to say, obviously, you have to watch the original, but I think the remake is better.
Okay.
Certainly from a production value standpoint and from some of the artistic delivery. Like there's a special effect in one of the opening scenes of the remake, the reboot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre that is unbelievable. Like while I was watching it, I was like, how did they do that shot? Like how did they how, like, it has to be a special effect. It has to be, they did that with a computer. You couldn't do that for real. And I watched the making of it, and they did it practically. And I was like, if they did that practically, they would have had to cut the van in half. They would have had to do this, that, and the other thing. And that's what they did. Like, they did this. They literally cut the van in half to put the boom arm of a camera. And what they actually did, I mean, we're totally getting off topic, but I love this stuff so much. What they actually, the shot is this. You can see the guys in the front of the van, and the camera is moving backwards, so you can see the guys in the front of the van, the guys in the second row in the van, the people in the last row of the van, and then the camera pulls through the head of the person who has just committed suicide in the back of the van.
What?
So your view, as though traveling through a tunnel in reverse, passes through their head.
Wow.
This is what they did. There's a boom arm. Mm-hmm. There's a long lens. So the lens of the camera is literally about 1.5 to 2 feet long.
Okay.
They have a prosthetic body on the lens.
And so they
back the camera up, and they get the shot of everybody in the front seat, in the second seat, in the third row, and then the body stops in the final seat, and they got guys holding it, and the camera slides through the hole in the prosthetic head, and then as it gets to the back of that, the head drops, like, you know, the neck drops, the head back, and you get the reaction of everybody in the van, and you can see that there's the body there. But obviously, because it's not digital, it looks real. So
because it is.
So I was watching, I'm like, how on earth did they do that shot? Like, it had to have been a combination of digital and practical effects, but they did it totally practically.
Wow.
So when a movie, especially a good horror movie, goes to that effort, like, I love that. Yeah. When they do it all practical. I mean, digital effects certainly have their place. I mean, I'm a big fan of The Walking Dead, and you'd be shocked to see how much of The Walking Dead is not practical that looks practical. Like, a huge amount of that show is digital.
That's what impresses me when you have great practical or digital effects. And I hate to bring this in because it's not horror related at all, but Lord of the Rings, The Height of the Halflings.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's completely BS the way they do it. Completely, they need digital to pull that off when they're next to the humans. Mm-hmm. But the thing that really impresses me is I don't think about it while I'm watching it.
Well, not only that, you'd probably be surprised to know how many of the effects that they did that are just perspective differences.
Well, I know it's like when Gandalf is talking to in the
Frodo,
home, there's like different size props for different scenes. But I'm saying when they're standing right next to each other.
Well, even some of those.
Even some of those,
they're not actually standing. There are a number of shots where you'd swear they're literally standing right next to each other. Actually, Frodo's just 30 feet behind him.
Really?
And they have created the set in a fashion that you create that effect. The easiest way to create that effect is to have no detail whatsoever. Yeah. If you're on a soundstage where you have a completely white background, you can have somebody standing here, somebody standing there, 50 feet apart, and it looks like they're right next to each other. And then when the other person walks forward, you're like, oh, I see what they did. It's a perspective thing. Well, they did a lot of that, but they didn't do it with a completely white background. They did it with a Middle Earth background, and they managed to. They did it a lot. Like, you should see the weird. Watch the makings, the weirdness they did with the wagon, with Frodo and Gandalf talking in the wagon. There was some real physical trickery that they did to make that.
I have to watch that, but I'll get to that. Let's get back to the show.
I do want to mention one other thing that I just found out a day ago that I did not know. I was watching this thing was talking about goofs in movies, things that weren't supposed to occur and whatever. Remember when Viggo Mortensen was fighting the Orc and he almost gets his head cut off and the Orc throws a knife at him? Mm-hmm. That was a mistake. The guy, the professional stuntman knife thrower, was not meant to throw the knife right at him, and he oopsed when he threw. So you have an actual throwing knife flying at a professional actor's head, and Viggo Mortensen, for real, deflected that blade with a prop sword. So in the movie, in the take, he did that for real. Like, you see this desperate swing to block that. That was not scripted. That was supposed to fly over him.
So what you're saying is that's not good acting.
I'm saying that Viggo Mortensen is unbelievable, is what I'm saying.
But not a good actor because he
I
just
guess
did
not
it.
because he's actually a swordsman. So anyway, so that's our review of The Shining.
Like we said, we don't like that one.
Yeah, not a big fan. I think that I'm a big fan of. I love a good foreign horror. There's a lot of good Eastern European horror movies out there that really encapsulated with what early American horror laid the groundwork for, and I feel like American horror has lost its roots.
Yeah.
Movies like Let the Right One In, which they made an American remake of it, and the American remake is also very good. I think Let the Right One In. I don't remember if that's the American title or if that's the European title.
No one else knows this movie but you.
It's a big movie. A lot of people know this movie. You don't.
No.
I'm taking a point away. You're back down to 2. You realize that you're as far away from points on the scoreboard as grabbing your own marker. Like you can just put them on there too. Babadook is also foreign. Babadook is excellent. I highly recommend watching that one. You said you don't want me to read one that I think is super scary. I'm going to skip that one. And let's segue into movies that, 2 specific movies that kind of reinvigorated horror and also parodied horror and at the same time encapsulated it. Scream. Without Scream, we would not have gotten the next generation of horror slasher films.
Yeah.
And what was great about it, it was so self-referenced and self-aware in a way that no one had done anything like that before. Like the first Scream, and Scream is genuinely a scary movie. It's both a slasher, it's both a horror, and
A parody.
a parody. You could almost call it a comedy to a point, but it's genuinely scary. Brilliant.
Which is the most brilliant form of parody is when it's
actually doing the same thing. Yeah. It's like I'm doing this and I'm parodying this at the same time. Was Wes Craven, wasn't that? Wes Craven?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of the Scream, pretty much the entire series. I mean, there's ones that are better than others. I think I want to rewatch number 5 was, I think, pretty good. I'm watching the television series right now. The television series is actually worth watching. It's pretty decent.
Okay.
Cabin in the Woods.
Okay. I've heard of that one.
You liked Firefly, didn't you?
Never heard of that. Okay, you know I'm lying about that.
Yeah. So who's responsible for Firefly?
Josh.
Who's responsible for Cabin in the Woods? Josh.
Oh, okay.
The thing that's really interesting about Cabin in the Woods is, like Scream, it really, and it's much more funny. There's definitely scary stuff in it, but it really parodies horror tropes, like in a huge way. But you don't get what's going on until about halfway through the movie. Well, you kind of get a piece of what's going on in the beginning, but you don't really get what's going on. It's like, it's real. Nope, it's fake. It's all made up. Oh no, it's really real. You know, like, and they cram so many of our horror things, and I mean like horror characters, horror tropes, like, you know, the teenagers that go off for a fun weekend, and they run into the creepy old guy at the gas station, and the hot cheerleader chick and the jock are going off to have sex in the woods, like all these things that we've seen in a billion other horror movies,
especially slasher movies,
and they just turn them over on their heads.
And I think it's so important to realize how important those kind of movies are.
Slashers, or
not slashers, but these
self-referential, like parodies
that are real and not.
Yeah.
You know, and it goes back to one that's maybe a little less real, but just as important, but from earlier, that helped reinvigorate monster movies. Young Frankenstein. You know, essentially, I mean, think about, you know, it's those movies that kind of slipped away completely after the early 60s. And then all of a sudden you get this parody of them.
Young Frankenstein, you're talking about, like, you know, we're talking more like the 40s. Like you're talking like
that,
Boris Karloff.
But really, the whole 50s science fiction and stuff sprung out of that and overdid it, and then it went away completely for a while.
Okay.
But then you figure this one movie, sort of going back to Boris Karloff, who was specifically being parodied in this. But they did it for real, and they did it not for real. So, and obviously, there's some more of the big, bold Mel Brooks humor in there. But like Gene Wilder was completely playing that character.
Amazing.
An amazing actor who you understand why watching why he doesn't call himself a comedian, because he's not. And he is, but he's not. He happens to deliver comedy well, but he's just acting and just so tied up into this movie. But really, that leads to it not only being made fun of again, but actually coming back as real horror, and maybe leads to Aliens. I'm just saying, or Alien.
Probably not a bad theory. So we mentioned Cabin in the Woods and Scream. We had briefly touched on Texas Chainsaw. We'd be remiss if we didn't additionally mention, Freddy, Jason, Michael.
Yeah.
Just as footnotes. Great movies. If you're into slashers, you obviously have to acknowledge the classics. So Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th.
And that's when Halloween. That almost frightened me, actually, was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah.
That comes off of a real, he wrote that off of a real story. There was a story of, I want to say in the Philippines, where multiple, it wasn't just one man, multiple people died in their sleep, seemingly scared to death. Like seemingly like they couldn't be woken up. They seemed terrified, screaming, and like had a heart attack in their sleep. And that's what
led to the idea of the story.
Led to the idea, like, what if you could be stuck in your dream and be so scared of a nightmare that you die?
And that's one where conceptually frightened me. And actually, they had a lot of good horror elements, I thought, the original one. It turned a little bit more comedy as it went on.
Yeah, big time.
A little bit more. But,
that was, I see, I'll give you 2 points for that. All right, it's a tie game, kids.
So he'll come up with a point for himself later.
I will, yeah, of course.
But the idea was it was brilliantly done. It just, once again, I don't know why. Just horror movies just don't pull it off for me.
I think maybe it's that kind of horror movie, because that is definitely its own flavor.
Yeah.
The slasher / serial killer that can't be killed permanently. Yeah. Like, they always got to come back. So.
Brings out the skeptic in me, which is not a good thing when you're watching fiction.
Are we ready to talk about what I think is one of the scariest movies?
And we'll see if it matches with mine.
It definitely doesn't, I'm sure, because you're insane. I'm going to say this very. I got caveats to this, and that is that. If you were to say, what's the top 10 horror movies, it would be a lot of the ones that I've mentioned in this episode. Yeah. When I watched this movie, it immediately went into the top 10 for me. I genuinely believe that this movie deserves to be on any list of top, 10 scariest movies ever made, because this movie was genuinely terrifying to me. Sinister.
I've actually not seen Sinister.
Sinister is incredibly scary. Now, it has atmospheric scare. It has jump scare. It has a complete tale, which, as you know, I have complained about many times in horror movies. The thing, I don't know. The thing that I love about the intro in the movie, like, you're not sure what you're looking at. Like, you're looking at something and you can discern the image. Like, what physically you're looking at, but you don't understand why it's that way and what's going to happen. And then as it slowly comes together, it's one of the most terrifying images I've ever seen as a horror, certainly as a horror.
So Sinister really lived up to its name.
Oh, yes. It is very scary. And the sequel is also really good. It's not as good as the first one, but it's not bad.
It's on par. And you're saying maybe if you watch them out of sequence, it might be as scary.
Well, the thing that's cool, you have to watch them in sequence, because the second one tells you more. The second one gives you more reason for things to be the way they are, which I liked. They shared a little bit more of the mythology.
But reason takes away from horror. Reason and horror can't exist together in a classic horror movie sense.
How do you figure it?
Because reason is the thing that defeats horror.
Are you talking about in the case of a supernatural horror?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a supernatural horror, so I can get, if you try to logic the heck out of it, it undoes the magic
all the time.
Yeah. So the thing that's cool about the second one, in that it gives you more of, it's a boogeyman style character, and it gives you more of why, and it also gives you more scary stuff too. So good. Sinister. That's mine. That's my pick.
Mine was Waterworld.
You've been waiting all episode to revisit the Waterworld discussion.
Yeah, I have it written down here. It just was a horrible movie.
I don't think we've discussed Waterworld for like 40 episodes, but you don't want to let it go. Okay. Go ahead, Jeff. Why is Waterworld the scariest movie?
Because of all of the production effort put into this movie. When I watched it, it was so horrible that it scares me to death.
Just keep.
He was erasing his score, so he now has 0.
Scratching off all of Jeff's points. All of Jeff's points are gone. He's back down to 0. I'm winning 4-0.
Like I said, there's never any suspense to who's going to win when Michael keeps score, which is all the time.
Well, people like to know what's going to, there's something to be said for consistency, Jeff. It's something you can rely on.
Yes, sort of like me going after Waterworld. Okay.
Yeah, pretty fair.
Or Neil Gaiman.
Do you actually have a horror movie that you can fall back on? Like a genuine, like this movie?
It's Omen.
Yeah, the Omen.
For me, realistically, Omen, the idea of it, the whole idea that, and that one, the first one to me was so creepy because it's like you're almost not sure to blame the kid or not.
Yeah.
Because it's all around him.
Yeah. And then it's almost him, but then not.
But it's a kid, and it's like this innocent kid. It's not like your idea, I think, where a lot of horror goes when they use children is the idea of this innocent child being a horrific murderer. That is scary.
Yeah. But
what made the Omen more frightening
like
was
the orphan, or
it's like you felt like you couldn't blame the kid, and then you could almost blame the kid, like you said, and then but no, it's not the kid.
Yeah. Look how the movie ends. You're like, oh my gosh, is he really going to do this? And then, but then the look the casting, like that kid. I don't think any other child
was that. Rock Hudson was his father. Who was his father? I forget. His father was brilliant.
I totally know. Hang on, I'm gonna have to look
because it's not Rock Hudson, but it's like that generation.
Yeah, definitely that generation. It's not Rock Hudson. The Omen. This is great for podcasts when we look something up.
I know.
On the internet.
Oh wow, the sound of typing makes a wonderful podcast.
It came out in 1976. That's the year I was born. I know.
Well, back in my day.
What was it? Gregory Peck.
Peck.
Yeah, how can we both forget that? Gregory Peck.
Who was phenomenal.
Amazing.
But he's a phenomenal actor, so he could pull it off.
Lee Remick, Harvey Stevens. I mean, this movie had an amazing cast.
Yeah, and it was really, I mean, for me, that is the ultimate, and maybe I think it's part of my dislike of modern horror is it can't recapture that moment of horror I had. And even though, and the ones I've seen since then do like something good, like whether it's the feel of the movie is scary or the build up, the tension is scary, but I haven't found one that's brought all of the elements back together for me again.
Yeah, like for me, when I watch Sinister, it's not that it's like an old horror movie. It's definitely a more modern horror movie, but it's a complete horror movie, and
which is why I might be willing to check it out because
check it out. Kevin Bacon.
I think Jesus Christ.
Does that not sell you? You don't like Kevin Bacon?
He's overplayed.
Oh wait, I'm a total liar. It's not Kevin Bacon.
But I'm sure it's like 3 degrees separated at most.
It's Ethan Hawke.
Okay.
Ethan Hawke, not Kevin. I'm sorry. I don't know why I went Kevin Bacon. It was Ethan Hawke.
Well, it's just an assumption that he's somehow involved in the movie still.
He's in the background. He plays the character. The Omen, for me, the two things, obviously the mother's death in the movie is one of the scariest things ever filmed.
And you're like, no way.
And, well, I think you might be thinking of The Nanny. The Nanny's death is the birthday one.
You're talking about on the second story of the house.
That's the nanny.
No. On the inside at the railing.
That's the mother.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things you're like, no, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
This isn't going to happen. And you know it's going to happen.
You know it's going to happen.
But you're telling yourself
like,
it's not going to happen.
No. And I've seen there's tons of great. I know there's another movie.
But the nanny part to me was frightening as well too. That was worse.
That's probably the most frightening moment in any horror movie.
Yeah.
Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't think of this. Misery. Oh, that's one of the scariest movies ever. That movie is terrifying.
Conceptually, that is the scariest kind of movie because it's also possible.
It's all of it is within the bounds of reality. And movies like that,
But to me, I don't know if that where it's definitely horror. It's not what I consider horror in my mind.
When she hobbles him, that's one of the hardest. Look, you're cringing right now.
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things.
There are two scenes in movie. There are two scenes in movie history that whenever I think of the scene, I cringe, and that is one of the two scenes.
Yeah. What's the other one?
It was one of the
Snoopy Come Home. Sorry. I'm sorry, Jeff.
That doesn't make me cringe. That makes me cry.
Okay.
Bastard.
What's the other one?
It was one of the, I think, early 90s zombie Caribbean movies. I forget which one.
Zombie Caribbean.
It's like some American goes to the Caribbean and there ends up being voodoo and zombies.
Oh, you're talking about The Serpent and the Rainbow.
Yeah, with the scrotum scene.
I don't remember.
Because I don't remember which one there was, but there was a scene where the main character is captured by the evil government official who takes a giant iron spike and puts it on his scrotum, and you just hear the hammer slam down, and the guy screams in pain.
Yeah.
And I screamed actually in pain as the hammer started to fall until it fell. And whenever I think of that movie, because there was another one too, there were like two of them, but this one movie specifically had the scene where they took a giant spike through a guy's scrotum.
I don't think I've ever visually. I don't think I've seen that.
You would remember that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
My point is because I know I've seen good chunks of that movie, if not the whole thing, but I may have only ever seen it on like a cut version on like USA.
Because those were both good movies, and there was like a couple of them right around the same time period. It kind of quickly came and went.
Jacob's Ladder is a good one too for weird, for not knowing what's
surreal
real.
kind of. Yeah. And I definitely wouldn't classify those movies as horror movies. I don't think they fit into the conversation beyond that.
I would think you could call Serpent in the Rainbow a horror.
Especially like, is that the one with in the coffin with the dirt coming into the, and that's a scary scene. Yeah.
I think Jacob's Ladder is more psychological drama.
Yeah.
Psychological
and
thriller. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely go check out all those movies.
Especially The Omen.
I
think it's going to get our top pick.
Yeah. Our overall top pick. Even though Mike, I think secretly wants to pick Waterworld too.
He's not lying. So for real world task for the day, if you're writing, get yourself off the writing, give yourself a break and watch a horror movie. Mm-hmm. And for world builder task?
For today, we'll say 4,500 words.
Well, what if they're not writing? What if they're not doing NaNoWriMo?
Write 4,500 words.
Done and done. Thank you so much for listening to the World Builder's Anvil. We would love it if you would share the World Builder's Anvil with 2 of your friends, and so would they. If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting by showing them Stitcher or iTunes, or, best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.